Chapter 4 Orientation. Red hair flowed down a white blouse to the waistline of bleached jeans. The young woman looked around Monique's age, almost as thin and too frail to hurt a fly. Karen stretched the biggest smile across her face and finished ascending the steps. Hi there, sweetie. We're new and a little lost. Can you help us? Monique almost gawked, but the woman was watching. She managed a slender smile. The woman's eyes narrowed. Really? I've seen everyone who's been brought in at night. We were recruited this afternoon, Karen lowered her head. For love of the worm. An infectious grin burst across the stranger's pale face. She stamped to the bottom of the steps and grabbed Karen's arms. Newcomers, I love that. We hardly get anyone joining on their own. That must mean the worm's will is spreading. Without a doubt. The woman let go of Karen and clapped her hands in front of her nose. I could explode right now. I'm so happy. Well, no sense leaving you lost. I'll show you around. Would you like to know my name? It was Susan, but I didn't like that. So now I'm Lady, and I can change it because all that ID and record stuff will be washed away by the worm's infinite oceans. We flow with him, and his waters set us free. Neat, huh? She waved an overzealous arm and stamped back the way she came. Her thin brown boots clacked hard against the linoleum. Karen glanced back at Monique, briefly dropped her smile into a scowl, and then picked it up and followed Lady. Monique wasn't sure she could smile that wide. She trailed behind Karen. Lady's enthusiastic footsteps faded into a softer hallway. The carpet's orange-brown fibers felt dull beneath the white walls where patterns swirled in the paint. Black doors lined the hallway, paused where it forked left, and then continued on towards its far end. We sleep here, Lady said. It's almost ceremony time, so we'll have to find your beds later. There's a bathroom on each end. She clapped again. Oh, but there's so much to see. The elevator to the Sunless Palace, the dining hall, the ceremony chamber, the practice room. Well, that's halfway behind the dorms. She pointed to the fork in the hall. What do we practice? Monique asked. Lady's eyebrow climbed her forehead. The only thing that matters, the song that pierces the universe. Oh, right. Monique felt Karen's muscles tensing. But Lady didn't seem to care. Her eyes turned to the ceiling. They built the underlevels before they built the music hall, way before I was born. I like to think of the surface music as inspiration. They play above, we sing below. A toad of anxiety planted itself in Monique's throat, and her scarves now seemed too tight. She hadn't been up for singing since she began sleeping beside the empty place. Even before that, Donna used to coax a song out of her only through begging or getting Monique tipsy. She wasn't sure she'd sound good enough anymore for Karen's charade. I have an idea, Lady spun around to face them. Do you know about the twin histories? Yes, Karen said while Monique shook her head. Monique fought the toad out of her throat. I mean, I wasn't paying good attention when they told us. I'm sorry. Lady glanced between them. That's okay. Actually, that's great. I love telling it. She turned from them and headed for the fork in the hallway. Karen glared at Monique. Limb from limb, she whispered. They followed Lady. Swirling paint patterns decorated the next hallway branch. Its only door stood shut at the end, where a vibrant hum climbed and fell from the other side. Shadows seemed to quiver in the paint with each changing note. Monique rubbed her eyes and tucked her beanie down a little tighter. Everything started with the seer who loved the stars, Lady said, stroking her fingers across one wall's indistinct patterns. They might have been dots for stars and dashes for figures. They might have been nothing at all. He wasn't human like us. His kind were more like birds who sang in the morning to let each other know they'd survived the night. But he was different. He sang at dusk to tell the stars he missed them. And one night, the stars sang back. That was when the worm found the world. Each step brought Lady closer to the door. Monique felt compelled to follow, the notes being sung behind the door, stirring her blood. The hum didn't sound like a real song. She couldn't say what made certain sounds into real song, but those weren't doing it. Lady glanced over her shoulder. "Do you know about Pangea?" she asked. Karen piped up. "The ancient supercontinent. All continents were at one point a single landmass until shifting tectonic plates began to spread them apart 175 million years ago." She didn't look unnerved by the song. Maybe she didn't like music and couldn't tell the difference between classical, pop, and universe-piercing arias. "For us, yes, Pangea is long gone." Lady stroked another white mural. "It might have been a world surrounded by stars, or any circle surrounded by dots, or chaotic nothingness. For the seer's kind, Pangea never broke apart. It was still around all those millions of years when the worm found them. He carved out the great Pangea kingdoms to be ruled by his kings, and the seer became the highest king of all. That was the first coming of the worm. But decades later, at the second coming, the kings betrayed the worm. All he asked for was one of their daughters, a little bride to call his own, and they wouldn't give him one, not even the seer. So he threw down their crowns and broke the seer. We call him King of the Broken Throne now. And that wasn't all. The worm reached back millions of years and smashed the continent so their kind would never be. Time changed then. The seer's people became a shadow of a memory of Earth. They never happened. Lady spun around and clapped her hands together. "And then we happened instead. Aren't we the luckiest?" Creamy paint rippled with song. One circle stretched into two prongs of overlapping circles, depictions of parallel history hid in the wall paint. The world stagnant in one set of years and changing in another. The stuff of comic books and sci-fi movies. Monique had heard of people who believed in space aliens, but never like this. Something about painting it into the walls where they slept gave the idea of fingers to reach for her, as much nothing and yet all-consuming as the empty place in the Freedom Tunnel. The paint depicted infinity. It was also formless slop, each shape as meaningless as the bare space between them. Everything or nothing, Monique couldn't tell. The paint would not keep still. "Now we wait for the third coming of the worm," Lady said. Has she been talking while Monique stared at the wall? Another mystery. "And when we sing true, it'll happen." Sorry, you probably know some parts of that, but I get carried away, which is good, right? The worm is infinite, so our love has to be infinite to keep up. It's like I always say, you can't love the worm too much, right? Monique's breath came out shakily. "Never." "Then is it really a religion?" Corinne asked. Her fingers twitched together as if she wanted to take notes. "Everyone sees the world their own way," Lady says. The worm changes you, and the biggest change is coming. The meek shall inherit, right? I think someone said that once. A phone rang behind the door, and the humming ceased. The silence settled under Monique's skin, almost peaceful. She eyed the paint for movement and patterns. All became still. There was nothing to see. The doorknob clicked. A bald, muscular man, about Donna's age, emerged. Wearing a white suit, a teenage boy in denim followed him. Lady clapped again. She seemed to like that sound as much as any song. "Mr. Bouchard, Israel, how's practice?" "His song is a pure needle, unspoiled by human doubt," Bouchard said, whose voice was a gong that pounded in Monique's ears. "He has his confidence back, ready to pierce the universe. We're headed for the ceremony hall." "Already?" Lady asked. "I'd prayed for— Oh, well, you know better than I do. We can't keep the others waiting." She herded everyone back to the dormitory hall where Bouchard took the lead. Nothing trembled in the wall paint at their passing, and Monique was starting to feel silly. The halls took them around another corner and past a row of shut doors. Lady walked beside Israel, excitedly asking about his singing technique. When he didn't perk up, she nudged him with her elbow. What's wrong? You're rejoining the choir today. You'll flow with the worm in front of Mr. Bouchard and the other preachers. Corinne cut in. Don't you mean kings? That would defy the worm's will, Lady said, looking back. Kings are kings. The rest of us serve in our own way. Some serve more than others, Corinne muttered. She wasn't making sense. The song that had eaten at Monique's nerves had been nothing but choir practice. She'd let paranoia mix with Corinne's wrong-headed warnings. These people talked weird, sure, but they seemed harmless, maybe unaware that a monster lived beneath Empire Music Hall and grabbed people off the street. This seemed encouraging. This seemed an encouraging environment, unfamiliar yet welcoming. Try a happier face, please, Corinne said. What's the matter? They're not hurting anyone, Monique said. Didn't you listen? Don't trust their smiles. They might look harmless on the surface, but healing and harm can be a matter of perspective. But it's just pretend. Also a matter of perspective. Monique scowled, ruffling her beanie. Don't tell me you believe this stuff. Not the way they do, Corinne said. Don't look at me that way, kid. I'll explain later. Monique stepped a little quicker to keep up with Lady and the others. Linoleum replaced the carpet as they stepped into a wider room. High doorways opened to the left and right. Chaos swirled in the paint on the far side of the room, where a crowd of maybe 100 or so bustled and chatted. They wore ordinary clothes, same as most anyone who walked New York City streets, almost like they were ordinary people. Their faces looked cheerful, and their pleasant chatter bounded off the open hall's hard surfaces. Beneath the noise, Israel was saying something that Monique couldn't make out. Lady was closer, though, and a little louder. Don't be ashamed. Palace duty is an honor. Israel shrugged. I know. It just doesn't feel right that we're all together up here, but she has to stay down there alone. She. That could have meant anyone, but Donna lit Monique's world. What did Israel mean by down there? They were already at least one story beneath street level. There had to be deeper places hidden beneath Empire Music Hall. Lady had mentioned an elevator. She nudged Israel's arm again. No one below can come up here. They haven't been dismissed, and we can't stay down there like them. It's too dangerous. Listen, the worm's will is the best thing that's ever existed. We have to follow it. Monique's mouth opened, closed. She didn't know how to ask about this without making the others suspicious. Corinne rescued her. What's below? She asked. What does that mean? Lady smirked. Down the grand elevator to the Sunless Palace. You know, old time. No, I don't know. Who's down there? Well, the Gray Maiden and that old man, and of course, Corinne grabbed Lady's arm. What old man? Abraham Clark? Lady's smirk shrank. Do you know him? Do. A good word. Putting Abraham in the present tense. Maybe Donna was alive too in the sunless palace of old time, standing next to Neverland and the Ark of the Covenant and other important sounding titles this worm called could dredge up. The hall's chatter died, but Corinne didn't seem to notice. I want to see Abraham. Lady tugged at her arm. You're hurting me. She looked at the faces surrounding them and then fixed on Bouchard. Can anyone help her? She's new and wants to know about the visitor. New since when? Bouchard asked. We aren't welcoming anyone who doesn't sing unless the Gray Maiden brings them by mistake. So you must have auditioned. Sing for us, Lady said, clasping her hands together. She seemed to be looking past Monique and Corinne, her eyes unfocused and reverent. Do it. Corinne dropped her hand from Lady's arm. Maybe she was realizing how careless she'd been to make a scene. Her gravelly voice hummed, not to sing, but uncertain what to say. Monique opened her mouth and sang a rising, wordless warm-up note. If she'd stopped to think, nothing would have come out, but now the tune spilled unbidden and desperate. Singing well herself should have been enough to vouch for Karen. It was only fair. Indistinct faces nodded. Bouchard looked over Karen's head. Monique didn't want to look back, but she couldn't help herself. In one motion, she pivoted on her feet and slid her fingers up her jacket sleeve where they grabbed the switchblade. Ooh! The oral blast quaked through Monique's bones. Her switchblade tumbled down her shuddering arm, out her sleeve, and onto the floor. Gray Hill towered over her. Ceiling lights shrank her shadow to just beneath and behind her. Taking 2 steps closer to the crowd would have given her away. Her silvery talons twinkled against the ungodly pale walls. Thick cloth still shrouded her face, but a shadow inside hinted at a toothy snout and a bristly skin that might have been coated in hair, feathers, or something nightmarish. One sickle claw tapped in the linoleum beside the fallen switchblade. Her bird-like legs eased backwards, letting her crouch for a closer look. She might have had a bird's fascination for shiny objects. Lady grabbed Monique's arm and tugged her into the thick of the crowd. You don't want to see this. Let the Grey Maiden do her thing. Faces closed in around them. Monique thought she should try to fight, but her legs wanted to run from the tall lady. Grey Hill, Grey Maiden, whatever this monster was called. Without meaning to, she let the crowd pull her away. Still, she twisted her neck to look over her shoulder. Karen trembled from head to toe. She turned to follow the crowd, but her legs wobbled, and the Grey Maiden's hands were quick. Long fingers latched around Karen's middle and yanked her off the floor. The switchblade lay useless in her shadow. Seeing the Grey Maiden's enormous height and limbs in clear light, Monique knew for certain a cut would have only pissed her off. Stop her, Monique muttered to Lady. I don't tell her what to do, Lady said with a laugh in her voice. The Grey Maiden is her own person. Only kings command her. Karen hacked out a rough cough. I didn't come here to sing or die, she snapped. I'll find Abraham and then... Bastards! She wheezed hard and gasped again, and then she was quiet. Same as the woman from Freedom Tunnel. Maybe the Grey Maiden's awful hands had that effect on the human body, squeezing out all air until her victim became a limp doll, easy to carry. Monique almost shouted, but there was no point. She'd only give herself away and then be taken too. Where are they going? She asked. Too many people crowded around her now. She couldn't see Karen anymore, only the Grey Maiden hunching behind the procession. To Gray's home below Old Time, Lady said. You'll see it someday. We all will. She has her chutes, and we have the grand elevator, but all roads in life lead to the worm in the end. If that was true, everything would be fine. As far as Lady Bouchard and their group knew, Monique was one of them. All roads lead to the worm, then she'd find the grand elevator, Old Time, and bring Karen back. And with any luck, she'd find Donna below and bring her back too.